All right, welcome to episode one of the Innovative Investing podcast. If you recognize my voice, I also run the Daily Moon Crypto channel. So if you're coming from over there, welcome. And I'm sure you know Mezma. He's been on a bunch of Moon Math podcasts before. On this channel, we're just going to talk more general investing, uh, equities, private markets. We're still going to talk crypto, maybe like some macro stuff, just really what's happening in the market as a whole while crypto is snoozing. So, if you don't know my background, I've been investing since 2016 in stocks and in from 2020 in crypto. So, some of my big stock wins are like Meta, Tesla, which Mezma put me on to, and then I've got a bunch of crypto wins, which are on my Daily Moon Crypto channel. And then I'll just let Mezma talk for a minute on his background. He's been in this game a lot longer than I have and has taught me a ton. So, yeah, Mezma, tell us a bit about your background in investing.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be on another show here. Yeah, so I started investing back in 2015, right when about Robinhood came out. I was on the Robinhood beta. Before that came out, I was investing on TD, Ameritrade, and some of the other platforms for $10 a trade. So Robinhood was a big deal for me. Kind of opened up the whole rabbit hole to be able to just invest, you know, as a college student, only investing a couple $100 every week. You can't afford to do $10 transactions, so that was a big deal for me. Became obsessed. I was early investor in Tesla, as you mentioned, and Nvidia as well. Had Nvidia at $3, still holding that. But and then, yeah, fell in love with crypto in 2017. Dove deep in the bear market around 2018, 2019 was early in Link, and a couple other, obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and then some other deep in projects were extremely exciting. And then the metaverse meta as well with Sand, Mana, and a couple of the gaming projects. Those obviously all blew up in the 2022 bear market. And then since then, I've been diving deep into the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem and doubling down on DeepIn as well. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, so we'll just jump right into one of your biggest positions, or is maybe your biggest position, Tesla.
Yes. Yeah, been a huge fan of Tesla a long time.
I mean, your pinned tweet is still that Tesla tweet, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's from back from 2019. I remember right around that time, people were really scared about Tesla, going bankrupt. At the time, it's like probably the lowest had been in 5 years, and I just remember people were, and I think people were really concerned about, just the competition from China. If they could ramp up, they were having difficulties with panel gaps and the rest, and people weren't really impressed with the quality of the cars. There wasn't even really any conversation about driverless cars back then. I mean, Elon was hyping it up. He's just late on his predictions and promises, but he always ends up, falling through. So I just saw the cult, you know, forming kind of like Apple had in the early days. And it just seemed like, it had the community. People were riled up about, of course, the electric and the environmentally friendly option. And just that Teslas were obviously a lot better of a car at that point. Even just like you could charge them, drive them a lot faster, and they had some new, like the Frunk was coming out in a little while. So there's just some interesting things going on with Tesla that people were excited about. And yeah, made that tweet. And obviously since then, I think there's, some big competition from China with BYD, some of these other competitors. There was Neo as well back then that kind of fell off. Then we saw the hydrogen powered cars. I don't know if you remember that company that they've just done terribly since then. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing for me in Tesla is obviously the humanoid robots. Energy also is doing extremely well, growing really fast, faster than the car business. But the humanoid robot is probably the most exciting aspect of Tesla for me now. I mean, it has been since they released it a couple of years ago, like the plans to build it. Since 2015, I've always been interested in robots, and there really wasn't a company that was wholly focused on obviously Tesla's energy and cars, but Elon's pretty much made it clear that humanoid robots are going to be the driving factor behind Tesla becoming the biggest company in the world. So, and obviously they're going to take over so many things that we do. Pretty much all blue collar jobs are at risk. And yeah, so huge fan of Tesla, still my biggest position. Trying to buy more here. I bought more in the last couple of years during that dip down to 100 and hoping we get another nice little dip here after the rally from the Trump win. But yeah, super focused on that, doing some covered calls, some cash secured puts just for income and hopefully buy some cheaper shares over the next few months.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, humanoid robots are going to be a massive force in the economy, like not just from Tesla, but even from the other companies. Do you think there's a big issue in the way like banks and other investment funds financially model Tesla's earnings into the future?
Yeah, I mean this has always been a concern that funds and banks, they always value Tesla as a, car company rather than a real world AI company. And Elon's touched on this many times that Tesla is the biggest, strongest, fastest real world AI company there is. There's nothing that really competes with it, nothing even close. And that's part of the problem is that banks, they've always been kind of viewing Tesla still as just a car company and valuing it in that way. And people are too caught up on the earnings, right? And that was one of the problem early on. Even back in 2019, people were still just valuing it as, oh, okay, how fast can they ramp these cars? But meanwhile, their energy business is growing faster. And then, yeah, the humanoid robot release was probably the biggest deal now because people don't know really how to value that. Elon even says it'll be like a $10 trillion opportunity. So I don't really see
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
coming close for another company. There's nothing close in my mind, risk reward wise.
Yeah, also Tesla has like a crazy like good workforce. I remember when I was still at university, the only company coming on campus that got the students hyped, especially the engineering students, was Tesla. Every other company coming on campus, like they're not even mentioned. But when Tesla's there, it's like they're here to play and like there's a lot of chatter going on.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point that I forgot to mention earlier, that I mentioned in the tweet as well. That yeah, they get to attract talent, right? From the best engineers in the world, right? So there's like some site that tracks it all, basically what, engineers, what companies they seek out the most, and Tesla's number one, and then of course SpaceX is number two. And so people didn't really connect the dots. Like people, at your company are the number one factor of if your company's successful. And if they get to choose the most, like the best engineers in the world, and then also combine the knowledge with SpaceX, the top two companies for engineers, I don't see how that's not a massive competitive advantage, right? I mean, that alone is huge, huge deal. So, yeah, it's a great point, and I think that's still the case. I think Tesla's still number one, SpaceX two. SpaceX might have taken number one, but yeah, I mean, he combines knowledge, and there's even space employees that want to join to be able to work on both companies. And he's like, all right, that's cool. Elon's fine with that. So they share knowledge, and I think they were talking about the Roadster having some rocket technology from SpaceX.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. They just get to combine all that knowledge. And yeah, that'll be a competitive advantage for a long time.
Yeah. And even like that as like a marketing piece is like, hey, I've got like rocket engineering in my Tesla. Like I had one buddy who owned a Tesla, and every time me and my friend would get in, he would just talking about his Tesla, like the new like software updates. Like I've never seen anyone else that obsessed with their car unless it's like a proper like sports car and they're a car guy, which is really interesting. Like the car he had before was a Lexus, and every time we got in, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's a Lexus. We've all seen them, but the Tesla always had new stuff. It's more of like a toy than a car, I'd say, which makes it like
Yeah,
more
100%.
exciting.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Joe Rogan would talk about that sometimes, especially when Elon was on the podcast, just how fun it is for him, right? You'd always compare it to, an old ice vehicle where, you could feel the gears and all, the muscle cars and all the noises, and that's cool. People like, still enjoy that for a while, but at the end of the day, Teslas are just so much faster, so much more fun to drive, and yeah, it's basically like a Swiss Army knife, right? Could do so many different things, and yeah, the over-the-air software updates are incredible. So, you'll see these news like this FUD all the time. Oh, they have to recall these vehicles. They're not actually recalling them. They're just making a software update like 99% of the time. So don't fall for that FUD if you see it. It's still going on. But yeah, just to double down on that point, right? Like they have that ability where a lot of cars don't. They can't update. And yeah, that's a big deal for their driverless tech as well, right? They just have to send an update over. There's some concerns over like some of the older cars if they'll be able to update to the final autonomous capability without
Yeah.
having to get the newer models, but the majority of them I think can, and they're already pretty much there. So not too many problems for in that area, I'd say.
Yeah, like Tesla has a very cool business model of being able to like incorporate upsells where other car companies can't. Like I think I was reading where they'll give you full self-driving for like a month or two for free, and then
Hmm.
they'll turn it off, and then if you want to like buy it, it's like a certain amount per month. So they can get like that recurring revenue from their uh their fleet of cars, which is really cool. But like other companies just can't do that. Like they buy the car and then they earn revenue when like the car breaks down and you have to buy parts. And like I guess Tesla's similar, but they have a lot more capabilities, which is really unique.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, we could probably talk about some of the competition Tesla has on the driverless front, like Waymo, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
There's yeah, so Waymo's geo-fenced, right? So that's one of the major benefits that Tesla has is you can bring it anywhere. It doesn't have like Teslas didn't need to be on that road before. It could be the first Tesla driving on that road ever, and it knows how to drive, right? Because it's actually using their the cameras on the car and of course their internal um, AI systems just to be able to actually navigate and avoid obstacles and all that. Whereas the Waymo, they have to have mapped out a certain city and they can't really go outside of the bounds of that geofence in the city. So definitely, like, Waymo's doing well. They're getting a lot of driverless rides. But meanwhile, the Tesla, you know, ecosystem, there's already tons of people driving long distances, recording it on YouTube so you can see it. Because I have a couple of people that, reach out to me and be like, okay, like, is it actually real? I don't believe it. And even Elon's touched on this. There's people still skeptical. Like this can't actually be real. Like people are driving, 100 miles without an intervention, right? Where you actually take over the wheel and adjust the AI because it's doing something wrong. So Tesla's already won in my mind, right? Like they've already made the driverless car that everyone's gonna want. Whereas Waymo, we talked about this recently too, where they have all these devices on top of the car, like LiDAR, these huge cameras. I think you touched on too. It looks like, a little silly, right? It's just
Yeah, it looks like a movie camera, like gimbal, like those
yeah, that's
trucks
what
they
you
use
said,
to
the
film
gimbal.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't look cool. And obviously, like people are okay, who cares if it looks cool or not? But I mean, obviously, a lot of people are gonna want to drive cars that look cool. That's, a big deal. And aside from that, like, and we can check out the ARC 2025 ideas. They, when Elon's talked about this for a while, he predicted LiDAR is not needed. And it's super expensive, bulky, weighs a lot, right? All these extra devices that Waymo has to use. So the cost per mile for Teslas are actually a lot lower than Waymo. So the Cybercab, right? They just released that a couple months ago. And when say release, they didn't like launch it. They just kind of, presented
Announced it.
it and
Yeah.
yeah, announced it exactly. And yeah, no steering wheel in the car. Doors open up for you. You know, super cool looking car, different. The rims are crazy and yeah, they basically are just saying, right? Like this car you might not even own it. Like I think Tesla's going to just lease it out for some people, but a lot of the Cybercabs Tesla I think will own themselves because they obviously want to create their own Uber app where you summon the Cybercab, it comes to your house and drops you off. So I actually believe there's going to be a lot fewer people owning cars in the near future because they'll just ride hail from the Cybercab. That's already happening with Uber, right? Like people are Ubering everywhere. They don't really need cars. It's expensive. Whereas Tesla's going to be able to undercut that by a huge margin. So I think a lot more people are going to be using Cybercabs rather than Ubers because they're going to be so much cheaper. So that also competes with, public transportation like buses, trains, subways. So and there's a fear there's going to be a lot more cars on the road, right? Well, actually, it's complete opposite. There's going to be less cars because people don't need to own them. And so yeah, I think there'll be less traffic as well. And the long-term vision is that all these cars are able to speak, right? So you won't even have like they'll be able to communicate with each other so that there won't be as much traffic. They'll be able to go different routes without the GPS system, right? They're just going to be able to weave in and out of each other, right? So you wouldn't
Yeah.
have like a stoplight. So it gets a little crazy where, you'll be able to travel a lot faster for a lot cheaper.
Yeah. And I think these ideas to people who like aren't really into investing in like innovation sound kind of crazy, like woo woo. But for me and like for you, like a lot of the money we've made in investments has been in being optimistic where others sound pessimistic. Like it's easy to talk about these things and say, "Oh, like that can never be done. Like that's too expensive. Like this problem, that problem." But like Tesla has the best talent in the world and they're working like day and night to fix these problems. And eventually they will. Like they've proven it over and over again. So making money being optimistic, like you might not look as smart, but the money will come.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like a lot of people try to find opportunities where companies are too expensive or that it's, overhyped, it's a bubble, but you could have said that about Apple back then, Nvidia, and so many other companies. And like you said, it's a lot more profitable to be optimistic than a pessimist because yeah, you can only make so much shorting, right? Like you can only make 100% shorting anyways. Unless you're using leverage, which is a whole different game. But
Exactly.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
being optimistic is a lot more profitable. I mean, you're gonna hold for multiple years, you want that, 5, 10x return. You're not gonna get that shorting unless you're using leverage, which is like, yeah, it's a lot more risky and you pay a lot more for it. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree on that. You gotta be optimistic in some companies and take some long-term bets.
Yeah, a lot of the profits just come from being able to be open to hearing new ideas and shifting your mindset on how certain things are valued. Because like if you still like if you do like a PE on Tesla, you would have missed like the whole run up. You're like, this is way overvalued, like it's in a bubble. But
Right.
like that line of thinking has not proved to be effective for like a long time. You have to be able to change your perception of how these companies are run and how they're evaluated, and also how the consumer sees them. Like there's this video of who's the MicroStrategy CEO?
Oh, Sailor?
Yeah, of Saylor back in like 2012, where he does like a similar bet to like the Bitcoin bet, but like he puts it all on Apple. And
Yeah, yeah.
he's talking about iPhones, how people talk about iPhones today, and he says that they are a piece of fashion where it's not just a piece of technology, it's like status, it's looks, it's aesthetics. And now obviously everyone has come around to that idea, but back in 2012, nobody was thinking that way. And being able to have that perspective on Apple was able to make him a ton of money before other people saw it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it brings up another good point, which is just people often feel like they're late, right? And we can talk about that with Bitcoin too. And I think one of the most obvious investment opportunities was Apple back then, right? When they were innovating and when they came out with the iPhone, you're like, okay, like how do you not buy? Like, I wish I had some money back then. Obviously, I was screwing around playing video games or whatever, like in high school or something at the time. And it's just like, okay, this is clearly going to be a massive company. Steve Jobs, everything going on there. It's so obvious they're going to do it. They're going to they're going to become one of the biggest companies in the world. And yet people were like, oh, okay, well, the iPhone already came out. Like, they're already a decently sized company. Like, how much can I really make from this? And now we got trillion-dollar companies, and people would never imagine that, right? Like, even billion-dollar companies back then was like, okay, this is crazy. Now, billion-dollar companies like, okay, it's peanuts. So I think it's very similar opportunity in Tesla right now where people think it's late. It's already had this huge run up from 2019. How much can I really make from this? And now people need to start thinking in like tens of trillions of dollars in market cap, not just, 1, 2 trillion. And so, yeah, I think people need to get out of that mindset where it's too late for some of these companies. Obviously, you can go out and pick penny stocks. You can pick like 10, $100 million market cap companies, but it comes down to risk reward, right? You want to be buying these companies that have, the scale like Tesla has. And yeah, I really do still think it's early for Tesla. There's, you know, no humanoid robots in action right now. We can talk about Figure AI, right? They actually just announced a deal with BMW where they're going to give over, some of these humanoid robots from Figure AI team to BMW to do, simple factory work. That's like the first real humanoid robot doing work for another company, and Figure is going to get paid for it. So we're at like 0 to 1% of where this is all going. So it's extremely early. Humanoid robots is clearly the biggest opportunity, probably in history with investing. Aside from the internet, crypto, this is going to be the biggest product ever. There's going to be billions of them. Even Elon mentions that there's probably going to be more humanoid robots than people. That's a crazy prediction, but I can see that happening. And we can go all into detail about, population decline, the workforce is aging. We're going to need humanoid robots. This is going to be like a necessity for the world. We need them to take care of so many of the problems, even just taking care of elderly people. That's like a major issue. And there's not enough people to do it. And there's going to be so many more people that need that help. And so humanoid robots alone can just solve that issue. So, and there's several other examples. It's just gonna be massive. So, huge bull in Tesla, humanoid robots. There will be a bubble for it. Yeah, last point there is all some of the richest people in the world are buying a ton of exposure into these humanoid companies. So Figure AI, right? They raised money from OpenAI, Jeff Bezos, some of the major funds out of China. Everyone's trying to get a piece of this because they know it's going to be the next biggest product.
Yeah, it's so frustrating that it's not really available to retail that easy. Like you have to be like LP in like one of these venture funds. You can maybe get exposure through like that ARK fund, right?
Yes.
But it's like very difficult to get exposure to this. That's like one of the nice things about crypto, or at least how it used to be, is that you could really get in on the ground floor if you knew where to look. But now I feel like crypto just has a lot of the same issues that public markets do, where by the time you even get the ability to invest in some of these amazing companies that are going to change the world, like they're already so inflated.
Yeah, no, it's a huge, huge problem. A lot of people are trying to, change that. They're voicing concerns over the accredited investor law. I don't know what it is. You have to make a couple hundred K a year or something to be able to invest in these. And yeah, like you made a good point on the ARK Venture Fund, right? Like there's solutions coming, but you have to pay a lot of fees. I don't know what the expense ratio or whatever they call it for these venture funds are, but I think it's for ARCs, it's 5%. So you're paying a lot to
Yeah.
get in there. Obviously, there's a lot of upside, but if you look in their fund, they're diversified. So there might be names in there you don't really necessarily want exposure to. Maybe you just want figure AI. You can't get that pure exposure. You'd have to, diversify into their fund. So yeah, I think there's gonna be some solutions coming, but it is kind of sad that now when, companies IPO, they're super overvalued. Or maybe they're, fairly valued, but all the insiders, the VCs, they want to dump. So you saw that with Robinhood. I mean, obviously, partly is because Robinhood IPO'd right before we had the inflation scare and Russia and everything else from a couple of years ago. But a lot of the insiders in Robinhood, they wanted to dump. Like even Snoop Dogg, he was an early investor in Robinhood and his VC or his fund that he has, and I'm sure they dumped some. So when you do follow these companies and they eventually IPO, it's smart to just, maybe average in DCA because there's going to be a lot of insiders that do want to dump and you'll be able to get that price. And we saw that with Robinhood, right? It dumped from, I don't know, I think when it IPO'd, it was around $50, went to 70 or 80, and then it went to $8. I remember making a couple of tweets saying this looks like a great steal right here, right? Like it's been flushed out. We're in a little mini bear market here in stocks, and Robinhood's obviously one of the top investing apps. Everyone still loves it. Aside from all the GME and AMC nonsense that happened, I think the brand's really strong. And of course, since then, it's gone almost up 10x. So, some of these companies, when they IPO, just wait it out, be patient. But yeah, hopefully we see more options in the future to be able to get into these early private companies like SpaceX, Figure, and some of the AI companies as well.
How do you think Robinhood was able to bring their brand back after doing that in, was it 2021? Because if I was on
Yep,
Robinhood, I probably would have just like deleted my account. And even like they did the thing with Solana, where that was like terrible.
that was bad.
Like
Yep, they actually made. I had to sell my Solana. Yep.
they did a lot of like really bad things to their users, but now they're doing as good as ever.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest factors was their ability to innovate on the app and do things that no other brokerages are doing, right? So obviously it started off being like the first free commission stock trading brokerage. And then I think the number one catalyst was their interest bearing, account. So you could just have cash sitting idle in your brokerage and it'd start earning, 5% interest. And that obviously was super valuable for people, right? They didn't want to have to go buy bonds. They don't have to figure anything out. And they can have their cash sitting there ready to go if they want to buy anything. But when it's sitting there, it's actually just earning interest. And when interest rates went up 5%, people are like, okay, like this is great. I'm going to move all my Bank of America, my, JP Morgan, whatever accounts they have over to Robinhood. So Robinhood is basically becoming the bank as well, right? Because people would compare, right? You can have a savings account at Bank of America and earn like 0.04% a year, or you could just move it to Robinhood and earn 5%. Why
Yeah.
would I leave it with Bank of America, right? So they got a lot more money to come into their app because of that simple. I mean, obviously it was probably not simple for them on the back end, but very simple for people to understand. Oh, if I just leave cash in here, I'll earn 5% and make way more than if I just left it in my bank. So and of course, on top of that, they were able to make a lot of money because to earn that 5%, you had to be a gold member. So you pay $5 a month. And then you just do some simple math. Okay, how much money do I have to have in my account to cover the $60 a year? And it's, a couple thousand, whatever. And then you're already covering the gold membership fees. So they just, got millions and millions of dollars to come to the Robinhood app from that feature alone, and then they've done so much other things since then. You can invest in IPOs right before they go live. They have a new really cool trading desktop app with a bunch of indicators, kind of similar to TradingView in a way. So they're doing a lot of cool innovation, and I think people just kind of forgot about the GME stuff. And the big players, the ones with millions of dollars that are moving their accounts over, of course, to add to that, they actually added in IRAs so people can move their IRA in there, and they had a match where 1 to 3% they'd match you. So if you're bringing millions of dollars, you get instantly like decent chunk of change just for moving it over. So they had a lot of really cool incentives, and yeah, a lot of money's come into the app. So I still think it's a great company to invest in. Obviously, it's a little higher here than it was a year ago, but I think they'll do well for a while to come.
For sure. Yeah, I just want to bring it back to talk a little bit more about robotics and like these adjacent plays. So like since we can't really get into these rounds because like we're not LPs, how would you play this robotics thing other than like investing in Tesla? Like are there some like adjacent plays that will go up along with the robotics industry expanding?
Yeah, so we've seen yeah, and we'll just like couple AI in there as well. Like we've seen a ton of strength in these energy stocks. Um, like everyone's talked about how the grid has to upgrade. Like if all cars go driverless, if we get to Stargate, from OpenAI where they have a lot more GPUs, these huge data centers. We can't currently sustain that, right, with what we have in the grid right now. So there's a lot of concern that we need to grow that, and China's done really well on that. So a lot of these energy stocks have done really, really well. I'm not talking like, oil, gasoline type stocks. I'm talking about, the electrical grid and any companies that help that grow. So you're seeing those do extremely well, and then you're seeing nuclear energy do really well. So Sam Altman from OpenAI, he was an early investor in Oklo, ticker OKLO, because he believes, nuclear energy is going to be a huge factor in making AGI, ASI actually happen. Of course, it's needed for everything else from robotics, humanoids, driverless cars. So those trades have done really well the last year. Makla's up a couple 100%. So some of those could do really well. I would definitely invest in those. And then farther down the line is, for humanoids specifically. So Elon's talked about this a lot, where they actually had to create their own actuators, which are these devices that have to go into the humanoid to make them move. And I'm not really an expert on the actuators, but they're a big deal. And of course, to create these actuators, you have to have rare earth metals. So you could invest in some of these companies that mine these metals. China's got a lot of great companies out there that are working on it, but there's also, apparently Greenland has a lot of rare earth metals. So it's interesting to see that Trump's been focused on Greenland. I don't think they mentioned necessarily the metals, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on where people are seeing far ahead what's going to be needed to create this insane humanoid robot future. So I think the energy stocks, nuclear energy, some heavy metals, those will do well. But yeah, like you said, Tesla's probably the number one way to play it in my mind.
Yeah, I mean Tesla is probably going to just add it to like their lines of business similar to how Apple just added like AirPods.
Yep.
Like it'll
Yeah,
just add
exactly.
more revenue. Like it won't make like a big like dent, but if they can bring it up to like billions of dollars a year, like that's hundreds of billions in market cap possibly depending on how the market wants to value that revenue.
Yeah, and interestingly, like there was some fears that there wasn't enough lithium. People were buying a lot of lithium companies early on for the batteries in the Tesla cars, and even Tesla said they're going to mine their own lithium and refine it as well. So I think they created their own factory somewhere in the U.S. to mine and refine lithium. So if there's a lack of rare earth metals for the actuators in the humanoid robot, then they'll just do their own mining and refining themselves. So Tesla will do whatever it takes to make this happen. But yeah, there's definitely a few opportunities in stocks to support. this whole new industry coming up, but it's tough, right? It's a lot more risky than just buying the company that's actually leading in robotics and a real world AI, which is Tesla. So that'd
Yeah,
be
for
still my
sure.
pick.
How do you think like Elon being so close to the president is going to impact these companies over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, he's already. I think the biggest thing and why Tesla rallied so much after Trump was elected is because of all the regulations. And a lot of people feared, okay, maybe we have the Cybercab, maybe it's fully driverless, but will the states allow it? And with Elon and Trump's relationship being so strong, Trump actually being elected, people are speculating, okay, these all the plans Elon has are going to be approved because of Trump. So there's a lot of excitement there because he'll actually be able to make things happen a lot faster. I think that's probably the biggest factor in Tesla's going up so much because of Trump.
Yeah, that's such a crazy like advantage that they have. Like his whole portfolio of companies, really.
Yeah, no, he's going to benefit massively. And of course, now he's got Doge, so he's going into the government, cutting spending, um, and probably cutting programs that are, useless or, slowing down innovation at companies. So everyone's going to benefit. And of course, Tesla, SpaceX, they'll all benefit as well. I think
Yeah,
Elon
like
really viewed it as existential, right? Like he believes we need to be on Mars, need to have, our eggs in more than one basket, and government was stopping that. Like I think SpaceX had a lot of difficulties with simple regulations that were slowing them down. So he really believes this is a huge deal for just the future of humanity, let alone like inflation.
yeah. Well, regulations are like massively inflationary. Like not saying that they're not like needed, but a lot of them just push the price of everything up and slow stuff down. So cutting the unneeded regulation will help a ton in profitability and like affordability of Tesla products, which is good.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So it looks like we are coming to a close here. We got like a minute left. On the next episode of the Innovative Investing Podcast, what should we go over? We're going to talk a bit about Bitcoin DeFi, maybe some DePIN stuff with crypto, talk about the new crypto czar and how we see that market moving in the next year or so.
Yeah, definitely want to talk about crypto. There's been a lot of depression in crypto lately. Too much focus on meme coins, millions of new meme coins from Pumped Up Fun, Solana ecosystem. Trump launching his own coin. People are just kind of, not as excited about crypto. A lot of the use cases that people are excited about outside of DeFi and store of value haven't really happened yet. So there's a massive opportunity in utility coins, and I'd love to, go over a couple of the top picks we have on the next episode.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how regulations change around that. I think there's going to be a lot of potential in that space coming forward, which is really exciting.
Yeah, we got to see what happens with the executive orders, possible Bitcoin strategic reserve. A lot of exciting things happening on that front, and then of course, Ethereum, Solana ETF, all that stuff. So people are going to be, you know, a lot of inflows are going to be coming into crypto over the next few years as banks are allowed to actually custody it and buy it on their balance sheet without it being a liability. So that'll be a huge deal.
For sure, lots of hype. So we'll see you in the next episode. See you.
Peace.